Avraham, on behalf of the alumni of the Mandel Leadership Program, I want to welcome you to Cleveland.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here. I'm honored to be at an event that carries Mort Mandel's name. I've been very much influenced by Mort. We met some 40 years ago and remained close since then. I haven't funded too many activities that he's interested in, but he's funded a heck of a lot of things that I've been interested in. It's sort of a give and take relationship we have. He gives and I take. I've been told that I only have 40 minutes to speak. So before I begin to speak, I want to say a few things. This business called leadership is a very, very serious issue. I think if you look around the world that we're in today, you can see the havoc that lack of leadership is creating, not only in the Middle East, but in Europe, in the Americas. It's probably the most sought after quality the world needs today. So I want to share a few Jewish thoughts about leadership. As a traditional Jew, when I try to talk on any subject, I look to our sources to see if there's something I can learn about the subject from those sources. So I look to our little black books and I find this black book called the Bible. And in this Bible I find this character who wanted to move Jews. Now that word move is a very important word in leadership, because the purpose of leadership is to move people. If you left people you're leading where they were, you haven't been a leader. The purpose of leadership is to move people. You can move them emotionally, you can move them ideologically, you can move them physically, you can move them in the amount that they give. But if you have left people where they are, you have not been a leader. So when I look at this Bible and I find this character, by the way, his name is God, he appears pretty often in the book, wanted to move Jews. Well, he wanted to move Jews out of the land of Egypt and into the land of Israel. How did he do it? And is there anything we can learn from that experience? It's an amazing thing to read when you read the story about the Exodus from Egypt, is that God did not create a single leader who could do the entire job themselves. How long would it have taken God to create such a leader? He built a whole world in 6 days. I think it would take somewhere between 12 and 17 seconds to create such a leader. And God didn't do it. You know why? God knew that if you want to move Jews, you need a committee. There's no question about it. There's no other way of justifying the fact that he did not create a single leader. He knew that he's moving Jews, and for that you need a committee. And God goes ahead and creates a committee. An amazing committee. God's A-team. And I want us to have a quick look at this A-team and see is there anything that we can learn from the qualities and the characteristics of this A-team that can apply to leadership in our time. It's an interesting committee. Consists of a gentleman by the name of Moses, his brother Aaron, his sister Miriam, and his successor Joshua. Now the only CV that I have for Moses is the Bible. You heard that I was the president of Hillel, a big organization, some 1,300 staff people. I spent most of my life as president of Hillel hiring and firing people. If Moses would have applied to us for a job, there's no way that I would have hired this guy. He has none of the qualities of leadership that you study about, that you learn about, or that you're taught to expect. or that Mort Mandel preaches about. I mean, the guy can't talk. He's totally inarticulate. He's a stutterer. The Talmud tells us that Moses stuttered because his love for his people far exceeded his ability to express it. Could be, but he still stuttered. He wasn't very popular. The entire Torah is filled with people complaining about Moses. Who are you? Where do you think you're going? Why are you doing this? He never stopped shoving his nose into other people's business. He sees a Jew and an Arab fight, an Egyptian fighting, he gets involved. He sees two Jews fighting, he gets involved. Who asked him? And the whole Torah is Moses said it, Moses said it, Moses said it, Moses. When did he listen? He was a lousy administrator. His father-in-law comes to visit him, says to his daughter, "Where's Mo?" She says, "He's a Jewish leader, he's not home now." So he goes out and finds Mo sitting outside the camp, judging every single case by himself. He had never heard of delegation of authority. His father-in-law, the non-Jew, had to come and teach him. Moses had none of the qualities of leadership that you learn about at any university in this country. Not even at Case Western. None of the qualities of leadership. And yet he becomes known as Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest leader of all time. And why? Because he knew exactly where he wanted to lead the people to. He was driven by a vision, and he was driven by a mission. Nothing moved him from his mission. Not a desire to be popular, not bribery. He stuck to the mission at all costs. He knew exactly where he wanted to take the Jews. I think if he was an officer in the Israeli army, he would have said, "After me," he would have gone to the right place, but no one would have followed him. But he would have gone to the right place because he knew exactly where he wanted to go. His brother Aaron was a very different kind of character. His brother Aaron was known as an Ohev Shalom v'Rodef Shalom, a lover of peace and a pursuer of peace. If I try to imagine Aaron, I see him walking around the desert with his arm around his fellow Jew, saying, "Share with me." He was always listening. He was unbelievably articulate. He knew how to talk to Pharaoh, he knew how to talk to the simplest Jew. He was deeply loved by the people of Israel. When Aaron died, the Torah tells us that the entire people of Israel cried for 30 days. When Moses died, nobody even went off with him. But when the two of them worked together, everything worked well. Except that one day, Moses gets a message from the chairman of the board. There's going to be a board meeting, a long board meeting, 40 days and 40 nights. It's going to take place on top of a mountain. And Moses leaves the people of Israel, climbs the mountain, and leaves the people of Israel in the hands of this guy who has all the qualities of leadership. He knew how to listen, he was articulate, he was popular. And what do? They build a golden calf. It's the story of Jewish history, and my friends, I think it's a story of history. If you try to lead without a mission, you're going to end up building a golden calf. The world is filled with golden calves because of people trying to lead without a mission. But when the two of them worked together, everything worked well. But they were not enough to get the Jews out of Israel. You know why? They were both very cerebral. They both tried to point to the mind. If you want to lead Jews, you cannot only hit them here. You've got to get them in the poich. You've got to touch their heart. You've got to get them to move their feet. And that's why God adds this wonderful leader, Miriam, to the team. I'm going to make a chauvinist statement. I apologize in advance. Too bad I'm old enough. Look at this woman, Miriam. In the entire Torah, she doesn't speak. And she's a Jewish woman. She doesn't speak, but you know what she does? She sings and dances. She plays the tambourine. She brings passion to leadership. Passion! You know what I'm talking about? I was in London last week. I said to them, passion! They said, oh. Miriam brings passion. And the three of them together are enough to get the Jews out of Egypt. But they're not enough to get the Jews into the land of Israel. And why not? Because none of them knew how to run the computer. None of them knew how to balance a budget. None of them knew how to take this great vision of Moses, this great articulation of Aaron's, this great passion of Miriam's, and to turn it into a program of action. And that's why God adds to this team the person who should become, in my mind, the archangel of Jewish professionals, Joshua, who turns the entire enterprise into a program of action. He divides the people into tribes, gives each tribe its task, tells them how to raise money, how to run the campaign, how to make 5.3% increase in 1 year. He does all that. He can turn it into a program of action. And that's the story that you'll be reading about in a couple of weeks' time in the Torah. How God got us out of Egypt by a committee that made up all of those qualities of leadership. And that is why, if you're looking at a company that's succeeding, don't only look at the executive, look at the team that he has built working with him. Because leadership is not an individual task, it depends on leadership, on a team. Because if you can lead alone, God would create such a person. His message to us is, if you want to lead, don't try to lead alone. BB, can you hear me? Don't try to lead alone. Jewish leadership demands a team. But if you want to build a team, you've got to make sure, because it's never going to be divided in the same way as these four people are described. But the sum total of qualities. By the way, can you hear me without the mic? Sure? The sum total of qualities are those qualities that are needed. And therefore, if you want to build such a team, you've got to begin by, first of all, making sure you know yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else who you are, but you have to know what your qualities are, and look for people who work with you who complement those qualities. Can you give me another mic?
Just in case.
You're good. Two of them. I'm scared. So a lot of lessons there, people. Don't try to lead alone. Leave room for others. Don't forget to be passionate, at least about something that you're doing. If you can't be passionate about everything, you have to be passionate about something. People will see through lack of passion. Don't try to lead without being able to articulate a mission. Because a mission that cannot be articulated is no mission at all. It has to be articulated. But more important, don't ever try to lead without a mission. Now we can start counting those 40 minutes. Because I would like now to start talking about the mission. My friends, to my mind today, the mission of the Jewish leader is, how do I ensure the continued, significant renaissance of the Jewish people? I want to repeat that. The mission is, how do I ensure the continued, significant renaissance of the Jewish people? I chose those words carefully. I did not say the Jewish religion. I said the Jewish people. It was not an accident on my part. Judaism is not a religion. I'll say it again. Judaism is not a religion. You see, nothing happened to me. I'm still here. You know how I know that Judaism is not a religion? My father told me so. I grew up in South Africa in a very, very Jewish home. The first language I ever wanted to learn in my life was Hebrew, because my parents used to tell each other secrets in Hebrew so that we, the kids, would not understand. I was the first Jewish pupil in the first Jewish day school in South Africa. The truth of the matter is, I was the only pupil in the first Jewish day school in South Africa. My mother was the chairman of the headmistress, my father the chairman of the board. I don't remember my parents spending a week without adding a brick to my sense of Jewish identity, either by telling me certain stories, by singing certain songs, by making an effort to add each week another brick of Jewish identity to my life. But my father was an atheist. He was a Jewish atheist. He always used to say, I'm an atheist, Baruch Hashem. Because being a Jew, you can't talk any other way. I'll never forget, I just graduated from high school. The day I finished high school was a Tuesday. I just finished writing my finals in biology that morning. My father came to me, he said to me, Avraham, goodbye. I said, Dad, where are you going? He said, I'm not, you are. I said, where am I going? He says to me, you're a Jewish youngster, there's a Jewish state. Goodbye. I really didn't want to come to Israel. The truth of the matter is, I had this absolutely gorgeous girlfriend. I don't know why I still get excited when I think about it, but she was something unbelievable. And I remember saying to my father, maybe I'll stay in South Africa and I'll go to university and then I'll go to Israel. And my father says to me, you're a Jewish youngster, there's a Jewish state, bye. He saw that I was hesitant. He said, it's about her, right? I said, yes. I'll never forget my father said to me, I promise you, she really loves you, she'll follow you. I said, Dad, are you sure? He said, 100%. Never seen her since. It's not quite true, because a couple of years ago in London, I gave a talk, and I told the story. I said, I've never seen her since. And suddenly she stood up in the audience. After 40 years. She's changed unbelievably. I know that I remained the way I was, but she changed. But anyway, I go to Israel. Now why? Because my parents invoke in me a very, very strong sense of my being a son, a member, a part of something called the Jewish people. I couldn't have gone to Israel without that. I am Israeli only by virtue of my being a member of the Jewish people. I have no other reason in the world to live in that country. I can't stand the weather. I despise the drivers. I don't like the salary. But I love that country, not as Avraham the individual, but as Avraham the Jew, because of my membership in this thing called the Jewish people. So I know that I'm a member of this people. And two quick stories to tell you what happens with a thing like that. I arrive in Israel. My entire family in Israel comes to meet me at the airport. My entire family in Israel live on two kibbutzim. Half of them live on a kibbutz in the south called Kibbutz Lahav. The other half live on a kibbutz in the north called Kibbutz Mizrah. Kibbutz Lahav is the largest pig-raising kibbutz in Israel. And Kibbutz Mizrah is the largest producer of pork sausages in the entire Middle East. My entire family in Israel is in the pig business. And my first day in the Jewish state was the first time in my life that I ever saw a real live walking pig. I'd never seen one before. I've seen many two-legged pigs in South Africa. I never saw a four-legged one before. I've seen pigs hanging in a butcher shop, sliced in a plate, but I never saw a real live pig. On my first day in the Jewish state, my cousin Kate takes me around the kibbutz. We come to the pigsty. I go into shock, not because I was religious, but I know that the Jewish people and pigs has not been a love affair throughout the Jewish generations. And I turned to my Israeli cousin. I said to my Israeli cousin, Amira, I'm so surprised. The first thing I should see in the Jewish state is a pig. And she looks at me and she says to me, oh, typically Israeli, oh, Avraham, it was so important to be Jewish in South Africa. But now you've come to Israel. You can stop being Jewish. I wanted to get on a plane and go home. She was 40 years younger then. I didn't want to stay in that country. I didn't come to become an Israeli. I moved to Israel because I was told it's a Jewish state and I'm a Jewish youngster. So that kicked off a search in my mind. I spent the next 8-9 years of my life trying to search for an answer. What do I mean when I say that I'm Jewish? And I eventually became what I can most clearly and precisely describe as a more or less traditionally practicing Jew, approximately. A guy who lives his life in an amazing love affair with everything Jewish. And then I was asked, come to the third story, I was asked if I would come to the United States of America to work with a Jewish community in this country. My immediate reaction was that I would much rather go to an English-speaking country, but they wanted me to come to America. And I came to America. The Jewish agency met me at the airport. I said, where am I going? They said to me, you're going to a city called Baltimore, Maryland. I said, where's Baltimore, Maryland? They were very nice. They rented a car for me. They stuck me on a road called the New Jersey Turnpike. And they said, keep going south. You can't miss it. There I am on my first day in the great United States of America, riding down the New Jersey Turnpike. And all of a sudden, I see a massive sign right across the New Jersey Turnpike. And the sign said on it, families who pray together, stay together. This sign is sponsored by the Council of Protestants, Catholics, and Jews. And I almost had an accident. I could not for the life of me figure out what were Jews doing on that signpost. I've never heard of anything so more stupid in my entire life than Catholic Protestant Jew. To say Catholic Protestant Jew is like saying brown, green, yellow, and fat. It doesn't go together. Doesn't make sense. And the ruination of our achieving the mission that Jews should set for ourselves today in how to ensure the continued significant survival of the Jewish people is that we have convinced 3 generations that Judaism is a religion. Judaism is the religious culture of a particular people, but we are first and foremost a people. The first convert to Judaism, a woman by the name of Ruth. The book's called Ruth, tells the story of a woman called Naomi, who was married. They had 2 children. Famine came to the land of Israel. They couldn't feed themselves. They left the land of Israel. They went to the mountains of Moab. Tragedy happened. Her husband dies. And there's this woman, Naomi, left alone to bring up her 2 sons alone. They grow up, they marry Moabite women. Tragedy happens, the 2 sons die. And there is Naomi. She's decided she can't take these tragedies anymore. She's going away. She's going home. She says goodbye to her daughters-in-law. The one daughter-in-law named Ruth says to her goodbye, named Orpah, because this part of your neck is called your Oref. Turned her back on her, said to her goodbye, and the other daughter-in-law, whose name is Ruth, who becomes the great-grandmother of King David, the forerunner of the Messiah, according to both Jewish and Christian theology, uses 4 words that are basic to an understanding of what it means to be a Jew. And those 4 words were Amech, Ami, Elohai, Elohai. Your people are my people, and your God is my God. Not an accident, the order. If I want to become a Christian, I can go to the church, I can say, your God is my God, I can become a Christian. If I want to become a Muslim, I can go to the Qadi, I can say, your God is my God, I can become a Muslim. In Judaism, you can never say, your God is my God, without first saying, your people are my people. The basis of being a Jew, the purpose of federation, the purpose of the federation's agencies are, how do I ensure the flourishing of this people? That's the basis. But in order to do that, we have to remember that we're a people. We have to tell our children that we're a people. You're talking to somebody who spent 4.5 years of his life as the president of Hillel in the United States of America. We have failed to tell our kids that we're a people. You can't fulfill a mission if you don't recognize that that's central to the mission. The future of our people. I spoke about the continued. It didn't start with the creation of the State of Israel. It didn't even start with the Holocaust. This people have survived for over 3,000 years. We can't let it just disappear because we've decided to talk a language that we're a religion. But we're destroying our sense of peoplehood by that. And if you want to be Jewish leaders today, we have to go back to a language of Jewish peoplehood. We have to know how to talk about ourselves as a people. I told a story earlier today about the first time I had to fly from the United States of America back to Israel. In those days, El Al had its own terminal at Kennedy Airport. It was called the Orange Terminal. I don't know why. It was painted green. It took me 3 hours to find the place. But I eventually walked into this room. It was a room a little bit bigger than this room. And in this room there were 3 identical booths. The first booth was passport control. The second booth was customs control. The third booth was Chabad control. They looked identical. I had no trouble with passport control. It was a breeze getting through customs control. I come to Chabad control, there's this little rabbi turns around to me and says to me, excuse me, sir, did you put on tefillin this morning? In America, you won't know what tefillin are. Then when Jews put on for prayer, it's like an antenna to make sure you get a good connection. By the way, ask any engineer of antennas, they'll tell you there are 2 kinds of antennas that work. One is a coil antenna, the other is a Y antenna. Look at the tefillin. You'll see that God understood laws of sciences perfectly. I suddenly thought to myself, what would have happened if I would have said to this rabbi, thank you so much for asking me to put on tefillin. I've never put on tefillin in my life. I would love to try it. It looks like a wonderful experience. I'm so grateful to you. My name's O'Reilly and I'm a Catholic priest. How would this kabbalah respond? Don't touch, I wasn't talking to you, have a good trip, goodbye. But if I would have said to him, listen, I'm Jewish, as a matter of fact, I'm even Israeli, get off my back, leave me alone, I don't believe in this nonsense, forget about it. He followed me all the way to Israel till I put on those tefillin. You know why? Because he knows that I'm a member of his people. And I'm expected to put on tefillin because I'm a member of his people. Not because it is a great religious act, but because there are certain things that we're expected to do because we're members of a particular people. This building, the purpose of Federation is to ensure the future, the success, the renaissance of this people. And they continued. I've got to tell you a story also that I told earlier today. I come from a long line of very famous physicists. I have an uncle who was one of the creators of the Sputnik, first satellite, Russian satellite, cousin at Yale, at Oxford, all in physics. The day that I was born, my father knew for a fact that I am going to be the world's greatest physicist. Einstein, nothing compared to my father's dreams about me. So when I eventually did get to university, I went to study physics. And the first day of school, I was sitting in the physics library. I was looking out of the window, and I saw a very cute young lady walking towards the history department. So I graduated in history instead of in physics. By the way, she's the grandmother of all my grandchildren. But now I've got to explain this to my father. He's waiting for me to put Einstein out of business. So I write a letter to my father, and I said to my father, Abba, I've decided that I'm not going to study physics, but I'm going to devote my life to the study of Jewish history at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I get back from my father at telex because we didn't have emails in those days. And I can hear my father screaming. The size of the letter, he was screaming in the telex. He'd forgotten about me. He wasn't mad at me. He was mad at the Hebrew University. He said, what? The Hebrew University teaches Jewish history? Are they out of their minds? There is no such thing as Jewish history. Jews don't have history. Jews have memory. I had no idea what my father was talking about then. Today, as a Jewish educator, I can tell you my father was 100% right. What's the difference between history and memory? History is knowing what happened in the past. Memory is asking yourself, who am I as a result of what happened in the past? And that is why the verb that appears more in our entire tradition than any other verb is the verb lizkor, to remember. Zachor, zecher, zikaron, yizkor, remember, remember, remember. And we carry it to wild extremes. Try to imagine a young couple. The parents have just spent a fortune on the caterer. They're getting married. They get under the wedding canopy. What do? They break a glass. Why? In order to remember the destruction of Jerusalem. People, I've been in this world for a long, long time. I'm an old man already. I've been in this world for a long, long time. I can tell you, I've never met a couple who spent the first night of their marriage worrying about the destruction of Jerusalem. That's not what they do. But you cannot start a new Jewish family. You cannot start a new Jewish anything without calling on Jewish memory. Because memory is what makes it continued. If you ask me, what is all of Jewish education about? It's about one simple thing. How do I take the single human being individual open their mind and link their personal memory to the collective memory of the Jewish people. That is why we're a people with a unique chromosome, the M chromosome, the chromosome of memory. It's what makes us who we are. If you touch a Jew and you touch a Jewish memory, everything else about being Jewish falls into place. Our relationship to God, which is not the relationship of an individual to God, but the relationship of a people to God. Our relationship to the land of Israel. Our relationship to the state of Israel. Our relationship to Jews wherever else they live. All that comes out of helping a Jew link with his people's memory. That's the mission of our time. And we have to make it significant. Our young people on campus are looking for significance in life. And I ask you, can any one of you around this table tell me of one thing today that young kids in Israel are growing up have in common with young kids in this country growing up? They have a million things in common, none of which have got anything to do with being Jewish. They've got drugs in common, and they've got sports in common, they've got music in common. They don't have anything Jewish in common. You know why? We've forgotten to become significant. But we were placed on this earth, this people, the small little people called the Jewish people, were placed on this earth. You ever heard the phrase tikkun olam? To make this a better world? Can you imagine what a healthy people we would be if Jews in Israel and Jews in America worked together on making the world a better place? It would make it significant. Our kids on campus would be thrilled to be Jews, to tie with our lot. It's a great honor for me tonight to meet with leaders, people who've been through the Mandel course. I just wanted to take those few minutes to try to remind us what is central about leadership and what our mission is. How do we ensure the continued, significant renaissance of this amazing people? Thank you very, very much.
Thank you very much, Avraham. I can honestly say, having heard him for many years, he has been very consistent in his vision and his mission. He didn't tell all the same jokes, but I've heard a few of them before. It's the same story, it's better every time. Before we open the floor to questions, I want to remind people at your place there are yellow sheets that are questionnaires for you to please fill out and respond to the evening. We would very much like your feedback. And there's also blue sheets on your for nomination forms. Also, if you would please take a look at those, so that if you have people that you think would be good for the Mandel Symposium, I know that Scott Simon and Susie Avitan would be very happy about that. I guess I should have introduced myself. I'm sorry, I'm Scott Garson. I had the privilege of being a chair of the Mandel Symposium in 2005. And it was the best class, right?
Absolutely.
I can honestly say that. I guess the reason I feel that is that the students, the participants, are the ones that make the class. And so take very special thought when you nominate people, because the people do make the class as the people make the people, I guess I would say. And now to open up the floor to questions, just a few words of instruction. There are microphones on your table. If you would like to speak, push the button on the top of the microphone until the light turns green. And when you're done speaking, please turn it off until you see the red button so we don't get the feedback. So if there's questions?
Not all at once, please. Yes. Somebody raise their arm there. Yes.
If there were one or two immediate steps you would like to see taken now in America, in the Jewish community, what would you like to see happen?
Well, number one, stop talking about conversion. There is no such thing as a converted Jew. Someone who joins the Jewish people is a Jew, not a converted Jew. We have a horrible problem of referring to converts as converts and not as Jews. You know why? We are forbidden by Jewish law to remind a convert that they're a convert in the same way as we don't remind adopted children that they're adopted. Because once you're part of a family, you're part of a family. But there is a phrase in Judaism called a converted Jew. You know who's a converted Jew in Jewish life? It's an exact translation from the Hebrew. Yehudi Mumar is a converted Jew. You know what's a Yehudi Mumar? Not somebody who joins us. Somebody who goes the other way. He may think he's a Catholic. Have I got news for him? By Jewish law, all he is a converted Jew. What an amazing concept. It's not an original concept. It's a concept that applies to any family in the world. How do you join a family? You're either born into it or you're adopted by it. How do you leave a family? You don't. You may think you have, but ask the family. It's the same thing with being a Jew. As long as we keep using the language of conversion for people joining us, we continue to strengthen the crazy idea that we're a religion. I want to take a minute to talk about something else that's rather more difficult. It's the Hebrew language. Anybody here from Omaha, Nebraska? You're very lucky. I never knew that there was a state in America called Nebraska, and I never knew that there was a city named after my grandmother, Omaha. That's what we used to call it. But I got an invitation to Omaha, Nebraska. I arrive in Omaha, Nebraska on a Sunday morning. They tell me my lecture's only in the evening. Avraham, would you like to visit our Sunday school? I said, I'd love to visit your Sunday school. I walked into this classroom. I saw this teacher surrounded by 18 or 20, 10 or 11-year-old kids. She's trying to teach them how to read a language they don't understand. Do any of you know what I'm talking about? I looked at the faces of these children. I saw the suffering of my people. I said, teacher, why are you doing this to them? What did they do to you? She said, Avraham, you don't understand. They're all 11, 12 years old. Soon is going to be their bar or bat mitzvah. They have to learn how to pray in Hebrew. So I called over one of the kids. I'll never forget him because of his beautiful Hebrew name, Timothy. I said, Timothy, why do you have to pray in Hebrew? You know what he said to me? Because God doesn't understand English. By the way, we may be teaching our kids that we have a stupid God who doesn't understand English. President Bush almost understood English. God doesn't. What are we talking about? You know why Jews prayed in Hebrew? Because Jews always do, all peoples always do important things in the language of their culture. That is why when a Jew tried to speak German, it came out Yiddish. He tried to speak Spanish, it came out Ladino. And the same with 22 other languages, because there was something that they couldn't say excepting in their language of their culture. We're bringing up a generation that manages to speak English without the slightest problem other than their accent. They don't need Hebrew for anything. You can't, I'm not expecting all Jews to speak Hebrew, but you can't be a people without a language that conveys the concepts of your culture. Have any of you ever heard of the phrase to fall in love? You heard of the phrase to fall in love? Can somebody tell me what the heck's the connection between love and falling? And if you can't explain it, it wasn't love, people. You don't fall in love, you rise in love. You don't find that phrase to fall in love in any Muslim language. You don't find it in Hebrew. You only find it in Christian languages. You know why? Because it comes from the cardinal sin of man in Christian philosophy. The first failing. He who abstains is the Holy One. Jews don't abstain. The more the merrier after marriage. Do any of you know how to say to fall in love in Hebrew? Lehit ahev. It's a unique grammatical form called hitpael. Like the difference between lichtov, which is to write, and lehit katev, which is to correspond. Anything in this grammatical form is interdependent between two people. It's a different concept of love. Tell me if any of your kids learned that in Hebrew school. Not one did. Language conveys basic concepts of a culture. You've heard the Hebrew word kadima. You know what kadima is? Forward. You know how you say before in Hebrew? Kodem. It's the same root. Can you hear? Kadima and kodem. You know why? Built into our culture, there is no future without a tie to the past. How do you say charity in Hebrew? No, you don't. There's no word for charity in Hebrew. We are not a charitable person. Giving to the Federation is not a charitable cause. Don't tell the tax authorities that. But it's a just cause. It comes from the word tzedek, meaning the righteous, just. How are our kids supposed to know this if we don't find the 50, 100, 200, 1,000 words that remain a part of our life? So if you ask me what to do immediately, start a conversation with other Jews about being a people. Stop referring to people who join us as converts. Help make every Jew have at least 100, 150 key words as part of his being. We will make a real change in Jewish life with those simple things. So,
going back to your discussions of participating in the significant renaissance of peoplehood and to alum, I'm interested in understanding the relationship between the two, so that is participating in the renaissance of Jewish people itself improving the world, or a central vehicle to strengthen us as an instrument for improving the world? And while we're going about the business of strengthening our peoplehood, is it still possible to improve the world pending our improvement?
Thank you for it. I tie tikkun olam to the word significant, not to our Renaissance, but to making our Jewish Renaissance a significant one. I attended the GA, not this year, but a couple of years ago, with a group of 35 Israelis from Bet Shemesh. And you know that American Jews all the time talk about tikkun olam, but with a very, very horrible Hebrew accent. Tikkun olam, tikkun olam, tikkun olam. I came to this GA, everybody was talking about tikkun olam, tikkun olam. One of these Israelis came up to me, this is a true story, he said, excuse me, Avraham, how do you say tikkun olam in Hebrew? This people, the Jewish people, were placed on this earth in order to make this a better world. We don't tell our kids that. Our oldest prayer, the oldest prayer that we have in our books, the Aleinu L'Shabeach, that we all sing beautifully, L'Taken Olam B'Malchut Shaddai, to make this a better world. And I want to tell you something. Most non-Jews know that about us. That's one of the reasons they hate us. We have a crazy law in Jewish life. If you want to be a righteous person, you only have to keep 7 laws to be the most righteous of people. Unless you're born Jewish, then you're stuck with 613. That sounds like a crazy law. You know what that law says? Mr. Non-Jew, you don't have to be me to be right. You can be you. Every fundamentalist in this world who tries to spread fundamentalism, whether it's Nazis, whether it's communists, whether it's Muslim fundamentalists, the basis of fundamentalism is you have to be me to be right. There's this little people running around this world teaching you don't have to be me to be right. You can be you. That's why every fundamentalist tries to get rid of us. Why else would they start with small little people? What did we ever do? All we did was say to the world, you don't have to be me to be right. That's a part of making this a better world. I just read a book, I just recommended it to you. I recommend it to everyone. A book called The Prime Ministers by Buddha Avner. A wonderful book that just came out and just sold the film rights to. It's a story about the Prime Ministers of Israel, 5 of them that he worked with. And I read the part about Golda Meir on my way here on the plane. Golda Meir is just appointed the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the State of Israel. She comes to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, she assembles the entire staff and she says to them, Ben-Gurion expects me to spend my time as a foreign minister dealing with Russia and America. I'm not going to. I'm going to be spending most of my time dealing with Africa and Asia. You know why? Because we're a Jewish state. We have a responsibility to help those who can't help themselves. I have a responsibility to make this a better world. Our kids never hear that. Why should they want to stay Jewish when they don't hear important messages like that? So it's tikkun olam that makes our life significant. Somebody else? Yes, sir.
Forgive me for challenging a bit. It sounds great, but when you say, but tikkun olam can be done by mainline Protestants too, and they'll assume the same mantle. But let me go a step further. Here's the real question. We kept that notion of peoplehood alive for 2,000 years, essentially using a combination of prayer and external oppression. In a free Western society, in a world where our kids don't feel that they're oppressed at all, and feel that they can go anywhere and do anything, how do you keep it alive in a positive way and without being particular?
First of all, there's two separate questions in your question. And if there weren't, there should have been two separate questions. Why? Because I've got two different answers. And by the way, my late father told, I have no idea if this is the subject I was supposed to talk about tonight, but my late father said to me, if you've got something to say, say it. If it doesn't answer the subject they chose, it's a sign they chose the wrong
And
subject.
if I may, I'll throw in the final part of the question. When you translated Tikkun Olam from Yalenu, you left out B'malchut Shaddai. You said it in Hebrew, but you didn't translate it in English. And I think it's fair, it needs explanation.
Thank you. Tikkun Olam B'malchut Shaddai, to repair this world in the kingdom of God, and everything Jews are supposed to do is in the kingdom of God. Not because we are a religion, but we are a people that has a contractual, covenantal relationship with God. There is no other people who are commanded Tikkun Olam. Protestants may do it, others may do it. There's no people who sees their purpose in life as Tikkun Olam. The Jewish people see it as a purpose in life. The second question, I can't remember the question, but I'll think of the answer.
Shall I?
Just a moment.
How do we keep it alive?
How do you keep it alive? It's very,
We
very,
keep it by
very
prayer and
difficult.
external oppression.
I was flying, I flew from here 2 months ago from the United States of America to London. It's open, there's a plate here. Flying to London on an airline called Virgin Atlantic or something like that. I've never heard of the airline before. Wonderful airline. Not as good as El Al, but a great airline. And El Al doesn't fly, United States, London, so I had to use a Deutsche airline. And sitting next to me is this woman, very cute, young woman, young in my eyes, she was about 50. They brought me my kosher food. She says to me, "Oh, you're Jewish." I said, "Yes, I am." She says, "I want you to know I have 4 daughters and they all marry Jews." I said, "That's wonderful. Every Yiddish mother would be very proud of that." She says, No. She says, "I'm a Catholic." I'm an Italian Catholic. But we taught our daughters to marry Jews. They don't steal. They don't beat their wives. They're not ruffians. She obviously doesn't know us. But they taught their kids to marry Jews. We are loved in this country, people. There's never been in the history of the world a country like the United States of America. And Americans should be very, very proud of that. We are so accepted here, it's unbelievable. We are world experts at knowing how to stay alive and to stay Jewish in a world that hates us. We haven't yet learned how to remain Jewish in a world that loves us. And that's a real tragedy. That doesn't have to do with our responsibility to the world. We've got to worry about our responsibility to our own kids. And how do you make it significant and exciting to remain Jewish in a world that's willing to embrace us? I'll share with you something I just said to Steve this evening. One of the reasons why I love American Jews, and I have a great love for American Jews, because I don't understand why there's 50% assimilation in this country. I don't understand why it's not 95%. This is an amazing country, willing to accept every single one of us. You can do what you want in this country. He's doing his thing. No country in history has ever given us more right to be different. And yet the right to be different somehow nullified our desire to be different. I don't understand why it's not 90%. And I love the Jewish people for keeping it down to 50%. Because of people like yourselves who are here, and the work that you're doing, and the work that you will be doing. Because to remain Jewish in this world is very difficult. What do you want from a kid whose mother says to him, You've got to do as well as the non-Jew. As a matter of fact, you've got to do better than them. You've got to become just like them. You've got to behave like them. The only thing you can do is marry them. What sense is there in that statement? You think kids can't see through that? I'll tell you what being Jewish is. I grew up in a home with this atheist father. But my father used to say to me, I don't know if there is a God. I'm not sure we were ever in Egypt. But the one thing I remember is that he took us out of there. Now you try to grow up normal with an answer like that. There's no possible way. But being Jewish ain't being normal. And we should not be ashamed to not be normal. We can be unique. We can be exciting. We can be different. We can be cutting edge. And then we'll have millions lining up to join us. And then, by the way, we should accept them with open arms.
You say that Judaism is not a religion, and I think everybody in this room probably understands what you mean. But all of us who have solicited for federations, campaigns, have come across a number of Yidlach who say, well, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't believe in that religious stuff. And mind you, your presentation tonight, inherent in it was a concept of God and of God's commandments to the Jewish people. So if you're talking to a person who is an atheist, never mind agnostic, and says that's a bunch of baloney and voodoo, I don't believe in that stuff. I don't know that you have an answer to this, but how do you deal with such a Jew?
I'll give you the same answer my father gave. I don't know if you were in Egypt. I remember he took us out of there. By the way, that's a crazy answer, but it makes Jewish sense. A very famous philosopher of religion, a gentleman by the name of Alfred North Whitehead, begins one of his books with the saying, religion is that which a man or woman does in their moments of aloneness. It's that innermost relationship between the single human being individual and God Almighty. I think he's right. That's what religion is. And that's not what we are. We do not Jew in our moments of aloneness. We talk to God in our moments of togetherness. We talk to God in the... I don't know if did I talk about Yom Kippur before, or was that this morning, this earlier lecture? I go to Shul on Yom Kippur. I also go every other day, but I also go on Yom Kippur. Although if I go every day, I should at least get a break and not go on Yom Kippur. But I go on Yom Kippur. You stand before God Almighty, you ask God to forgive you for your sins. So there's a prayer that we read 5 times. It's called the Al-Chet. It's a whole long list of sins. And as you read this list of sins, you beat your chest. And I'm a very passionate guy, so I beat my chest. And for months afterwards, I can't touch myself. I'm all beaten up. But I want you to know something. And Oren, this is true. Half the things on that list, I've never done. I don't know why. Maybe I just never had the opportunity, but I've never done that. So why am I beating my chest? You know why? Because we don't pray in the singular. Jews pray in the plural. Lo al chet shechatati, el al chet shechatanu. Oren, I'm beating my chest for your sins. I hope you enjoyed that. Because we pray in the plural. We don't stand before God in our moments of aloneness. You stand before God in your moments of togetherness. You don't relate to God as an individual. You relate to God as a member of your people. It's a relationship to God of these people, whether you yourself personally believe in God or not. And God, our Rabbi Stella said that to us. Halavai v'oti azavu v'torati shamelu. You want to, you can leave me, but keep my Torah. It's got nothing to do with your belief in me, but the way in which you behave, the values that you set for yourself, the life that you lead. Thank you all very, very much.
Part of